Hey everyone, my name is Wes, and welcome back to another episode of Terror Talk where I discuss creepy clips online. I created this original horror music to add to the video, and I hope you enjoy it. Be sure to leave your own comments, and when you're done watching, check the description if you'd like to listen to my music without the commentary. Now let's get into it and have some fun.
There's a nice hidden lake a short walk away from my house in Parsonfield, Maine. I've been going fishing there for as long as I've lived here. It's hidden away from any roads or houses. It has perfect privacy, and I would...
Do you like fishing? Let me know in the comments below. For me personally, I do not like fishing. I am kind of sensitive to causing living things pain, and even putting a worm on a hook, I'm just kind of like, not really for me. I feel even bad for putting the worm on the hook, to be honest. But let me know in the comments below if you like fishing.
would always be the only one out on the lake fishing. In fact, I would leave my kayak in the same spot by the lake whenever I wasn't using it. It was easier than lugging the thing back and forth from my house to the lake anytime I wanted to use it. I would leave it leaning up against this huge tree every time. The kayak is heavy enough to not fall over from a windstorm or anything. I also leave it covered to prevent critters from taking refuge inside. It was a warm summer's evening. I was out on the lake already for about an hour, and I'd caught a few trout already, which I'd thrown into the cooler. It was dusk at this point. The little bit of light left in the sky was disappearing behind the trees. I was gonna bring it in soon, and just then, I heard sounds from the edge of the lake. I turned and saw someone standing at the edge of the water, tipping a barrel of some kind over, pouring its contents into the lake. It looked to me like they were polluting the lake with something. I took it upon myself to yell out, "Excuse me, what are you doing?" The person looked up at me, and he then ran into the woods with the...
Don't you hate it when people just pollute the earth like that? I mean, at the rate we're going, I don't know. It just seems like with global warming and all that, things are getting pretty bad environmentally. And I just hate it when people can't respect the environment, you know? Like, look at that picture right there. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful lake. And people can just be really not so great sometimes, right? Like, I don't know. I feel like people should just respect the damn environment, but that's just my opinion.
The contents of the barrel still pouring into the water. I looked more closely at the liquid being poured out into the lake, and it looked like a dark red liquid. Though it was dark out, so I can't say with 100% certainty if it was red, but it was very dark. I felt a sense of unease creep up throughout my body. I decided I wanted to leave. I'm a big nature guy though, and seeing people littering or polluting the environment makes me sick. I genuinely couldn't resist shouting something out to that person, but I didn't feel comfortable here any longer. I planned on reporting this to the Department of Environmental Protection. I paddled the kayak back to my usual spot. I took all of my gear off the kayak before pulling it out of the water. As I was putting the cover over the kayak, I heard one single snap of something not far away, like the crunch of something under a person's shoe. I turned and was about to say who's there, but I decided against it. I finished covering the kayak quicker than I ever had before. I didn't even bother standing it up to lean on the tree this time. I left it on the ground. I picked up my gear and cooler and started quickly walking out of the woods and onto the road, which led to my house. It was only a couple minutes of a walk and I was back home. I kept looking over my shoulder the entire time though, thinking someone was behind me. I put my gear in the shed real...
Don't you hate that feeling when you feel like you're being followed? Luckily, I've never experienced that feeling too much at all. In the past, like very rarely. But it is unsettling, isn't it? Thinking that someone's behind you, following you. It's just, yeah, it's not a pleasant feeling in the least.
real quick, then went inside. I never locked the door so quickly. I was genuinely spooked. I rinsed off the trout and put them in the fridge, planning on cooking them tomorrow. Tonight, I just heated up some leftovers. As the food was in the microwave, there was a knock at my front door. The fear and dread that I was feeling the entire walk back to the house returned in an instant, and my suspicion that I was being followed home was basically confirmed. I mean, who else would be knocking on my door this late? My lights were on, my car was in the driveway, whoever it was knew I was in here. I had all the shades closed though, so nobody could look inside. They knocked on the door again. The microwave beeped as the timer hit 0. I'm sure whoever was outside heard it. All the windows were cracked open, and a moment later, there was a knock now on the window, and a man's voice said through the window, "Excuse me, I think you saw me at the lake earlier."
Oh man. What would you do in this situation? That's just creepy, isn't it? This guy came back from the lake and is now knocking on the window. Oh man. That would be creepy.
I'd just like to explain myself. There was absolutely no chance I was opening the door to this person. For them to stalk me to my house told me this was a dangerous person. They repeatedly knocked on the window and kept yelling hello through it. I decided to acknowledge him now that he was getting more aggressive. I yelled, "Yo, leave or I'll call the police." I intended to either way, but it was still a threat to get him to leave. The man responded calmly now, saying, "Sir, if you could just open the front door, I'll explain everything to you." I repeated my threat, and I didn't hear his voice again. At this point, I shut and locked every window in the house and turned on the AC.
Yeah, didn't he say before that the windows were open? He could have easily just gotten in, right? Did I mishear that earlier, that he had basically said that all the windows were open, or some of the windows anyways? He could have easily just lifted up the windows and crawled in.
Also made a report to the non-emergency police number, detailing both the barrel being dumped into the lake and the man coming to my house. I also made an online report with the Department of Environmental Protection. Making these 2 reports honestly made me feel a little better about going to sleep that night. But thank God I'm a light sleeper. In the middle of the night, like 2 a.m., I heard a crash from downstairs. I immediately sprang out of my bed and grabbed my Glock from the closet. I heard someone's attempt at quiet footsteps coming up the creaky wooden steps. I had my Glock loaded in hand as I stood behind my dresser right by my closet, aiming at the door. I heard very slow creeping towards my door. My bedroom door is closest to the stairs, so it was naturally the first door that they would approach. And sure enough, I heard the doorknob slowly press down, and then the door pushed open. I saw nothing but the man's silhouette enter the room. I flicked on the lamp next to me so he could see my gun, and I screamed, "Get on the ground now." He raised his hands in the air and seemed for a second to be motioning for me to calm down. He had a small blade in his hand. I told him to drop it, but then he said calmly, "I'm leaving," and he turned and ran for downstairs. I yelled at him to stop, but he clearly took the chance on me being too afraid to pull the trigger. I heard him leave through the front door. I ran downstairs to lock the front door right away and then call 911. My living room window was shattered. Glass was all over the floor. I kept my sight on that broken window until the police officers showed up. I had to explain that I already made a non-emergency report of what happened earlier. In fear of waiting too long by morning for the barrel to be gone, in the darkness, I went with 2 of the officers who showed up to my house to where I saw that man dumping the barrel into the lake. But after 20 minutes of walking around looking for it, it was gone. The man must have made sure not to leave it behind. I gave my best description of the man to the police for their report. The man was a short, bearded white man with a receding hairline and glasses, wearing a black flannel shirt and black pants. After the police left, I stayed in the living room all night with my gun next to me, watching TV. No way in hell was I going to sleep with a broken window and some nut job out there. At dawn, my brothers came over to help me fix the window. My brother Dale stayed at the house while my other brother and I went to Home Depot to get the window and parts. Dale stayed at the house with me for a few nights till things cooled down. My not-so-wild theory is that the barrel contained human remains, possibly dissolved in some kind of acid. Why else would that man follow me home and then break into my house to potentially murder me? Trust your gut if something feels wrong. I knew if I opened my door to that man, something terrible might have happened to me.
Wow, pretty crazy, right? The fact that that guy literally shattered his window and came up with a small blade. I mean, it seems like he was intentionally going to harm the guy, seeing as he had a blade in his hand, and thank God that guy had a gun with him. How do you feel about guns? Do you have a gun? for me personally, they make me uncomfortable. The thought of owning a gun makes me uncomfortable, but that's just me. But in a situation like this, it's really important to have one because it scared the guy off. And if he didn't have one, who knows what would have happened. But yeah, I thought this was a crazy story. And I hope you enjoyed my commentary and my music. And I will see you in the next video.